Computers, the foundation of technology, past, present, and future. Computers are giant arrays of pinnacle technology that serve a variety of uses, from both recreational to more industrial. Both were invented in 1943. These massive machines would be reserved for the most elite of research and data logging establishments, sometimes taking entire buildings for larger equations. The sheer size of these monolithic machines produced only the most basic of equations, and they took days to compute. Now, we're 60 years later, and times have certainly changed. Powering on your smartphone alone contains more calculation and synchronization than multi-million-dollar government computers from the 40s. We live in a day and age now where a web page loading slow is enough to cause aggravation. Computers are commonplace. They're in every household, they're in some form. We use them for a variety of tasks, from homework to gaming. We as consumers often see these flexible machines as something so unbelievably complex that we could never hope to understand how they work. It's a reality we often leave to engineers, while we just go to Walmart and buy something that works, I guess. What if I told you that this right here is not nearly as complex as one might think? Computers come in three major types. We have smartphone, laptop, and desktop. Each come with their own set of pros and cons, but we're going to start with the smaller ones first. Laptops and smartphones are truly technological wonders. We use them daily, whether that be for work or just to pass time. Both, however, have downsides we often forget about when buying. That downside is upgradability. System manufacturers regularly phase out old products. As an example, Windows 7. Recently, the machines that run Windows 7 lost support and sustainability due to the age of the hardware. On laptops and smartphones, there's no way to upgrade your components due to manufacturer design. This keeps you buying the latest model year after year. So that brings us to desktops. Now, you could simply buy a pre-built for an expensive premium, or you could build it yourself. It sounds like something far too difficult or it's outlandish, but it's simpler than you may think. Building a PC is not only cheaper, it is completely upgradable and therefore has longevity for years to come. Let's take a look at what makes up these machines. Starting first with the motherboard. The motherboard has many features to it, but the main attraction is the CPU socket. The CPU socket you have on your motherboard will depend completely on what CPU you choose to get. We'll get into that later. Next up is the RAM slots. These RAM slots will be dependent on what RAM you get. We'll get into that later too. There are plenty of other features on the motherboard, but those are the main ones we need to worry about for now. The key is the type of motherboard you get will be the type of computer you end up with in the end. The CPU, otherwise known as the central processing unit, is the brain of the computer. It performs all the mathematical calculations that are needed to make your computer and run the way you want. It's the most important of the components and therefore one of the most expensive, but try not to cheap out on it. Up next is the RAM modules. Now, many consider RAM to be what makes my computer run fast, but in reality, it's not just that. RAM stands for Random Access Memory. It's short-term storage that every other computer in your system can rely on. It can access it. It's very short-term, so it can be written on very quickly and taken from very quickly. The amount of storage you have in your RAM determines, how much information can be stored in that. Next, we have storage. There are two types of storage. The one I have before me is a hard drive. Hard drives are often cheaper and generally have more storage in them. Whereas SSDs are smaller, have a little less storage, and are more expensive. But the upside to an SSD is that they are significantly faster. Either way, it's storage. And you can have one or both in your system like I do here. Finally, we have the power supply. The power supply is a bridge between your wall to your computer. The power supply has plugs at the end of it that allot power to every different part and component. The recommended wattage of your power supply determines how much each component can draw from the power supply and inevitably from your wall. So that's it. That's all the basic components to a computer. It's a lot simpler than one may think. I learned myself only this year when my previous computer was failing, and I couldn't be happier with the product. Thank you for listening.